together who had previously been locked in conflict after James died. It was his son Charles that took the throne in 1625. Charles was devoted to the Anglican Church and loved the arts, which was reflected in his rule. Without a parliament in place, eventually he was forced to recall parliament so he could raise money, but he refused to give them any power and control over the land and church. This led to a civil war breaking out in August 1642. This conflict snowballed with the number of people killed, estimated to be in the millions. Through the 9 years it raged on, the Civil Wars forced caste to go into service, some of which hadn't been used for their military purpose since the Middle Ages. Many of them were sieged by opposing factions in order to gain strongholds that would provide a strategic advantage. In 1647, King Charles was defeated by the Parliament's army, led by Sir Thomas Fairfax, and Oliver Cromwell. Charles was held prisoner at Carisbrooke Castle, where peace negotiations were to take place unbeknown to Fairfax and Cromwell. However, Charles was secretly planning a second civil war, which broke out a year after he was imprisoned. This led to the king being executed in 1649. News that a king had been beheaded shocked Britain and Europe, which led to the future Charles II trying to invade the country with the help of the Scots. This attempt failed, with Charles only avoiding death by hiding inside an oak tree at Boscobel, and Shropshire government and church powers weak. After the beheading, which saw the rise of new and radical ideas often spread through pamphlets, growing religious sects began to preach about the second coming of Christ, a belief that spread throughout the country at this time. Oliver Cromwell ruled the Commonwealth of England, Scotland, and Ireland, donning the title of Lord Protector. Although Cromwell had his own radical religious views, he allowed all religions to be practiced throughout the country. Cromwell used his army to keep control of the country right up until his death, when his forces weakened and Charles II was free to return. 1660 to rule the country. The reign of Charles II, which spanned 25 years, saw changes to art, architecture, daily life, and leisure. In fact, it was this period that saw the revival of theaters. This period also brought some incredible scientific discoveries, such as the manufacture of phosphorus, which was dipped into wooden splints to create matches. With that being said, there were several disasters that happened during this time, including the Great Plague of 1665 and the Great Fire of London that broke out in 1666. The 60s, after a fire broke out in a small bakery downtown, went under heavy criticism about whether he should be the next king. Regardless, he succeeded his brother, becoming King James II. While the king defended the throne against the Duke of Monmouth, his illegitimate Protestant brother, he became disliked by many for the violent trials of the rebels, and the rebels' policies put forward by the king. Eventually, William of Orange and the daughter of James invaded England, which led to James fleeing, and the pair being crowned king and queen, the rule of William III. And Mary lived as he, and marked a peaceful period for the country. Mary's sister Ellen took the throne afterward in 1702. While her reign was known for the victory over Louis XIV, the most monumental event was the Act of Union, which saw the beginning of a united Great Britain. Now we've spoken a lot about the monarchy and rule, as it was the rich and powerful that could learn to read and write to document their lives and historical achievements. But what were the lives of everyday Britons like in the Stuart era? Most of the common people during this era were poor, with some forced to live in terrible conditions. This was only made worse by the influx in population, which saw entire areas impoverished and starved. This led to poor laws being implemented, which were first introduced a century before by Elizabeth I, which helped the poorest people of the country. Most of those working have a master above them who would provide them with a room and wages to live on. Vagrancy became a huge issue during this period. This period is the most impoverished of people were forced to beg or claim charity from family. In fact, many poor people chose to travel to the New World in order to change their lives and make money while times were most difficult at the start of the Stuart period. Things got better near the end of it for the poor. The focus was on finding the next meal. When food stocks were down, people concentrated on harvest industry. When soldiers during the Civil War were waiting for payment, many of them resorted to stealing crops and livestock, which heavily affected the industry and led to more starvation, while the working class ate legume-based diets such as beans, soybeans, and lentils. The affluent ate the rich meat diets and very sweet desserts. This led to many illnesses as a result, including diabetes and hemorrhoids. While there was a lot of poverty in England, many people held jobs to provide for their families. Merchants and store owners flourished during the Stuart era, which gave them the money to leave London when the plague broke out in the country. Many people were employed as shoemakers, blacksmiths, tailors, saddle crafters, and glovers, just to name a few, on the streets and cities of towns. Many people sold a variety of wreaths, from oysters to furniture, as well as offering services that ranged from shoe shining to prostitution. Those working on farm would be in charge of milking cows, collecting eggs, tilling the fields, and taking care of the livestock during this period. Like those that came before, roles were defined by the sexes, with girls expected to follow the orders of their brothers, husbands, and then their sons. The wife and mother of the family were put in charge of running and cleaning the house, preparing food, and raising the children. If a woman came from a wealthy family, she could avoid marriage and the duties that came with it, while poor women chose to work as work. Servants, wet nurses, or midwives. The sad truth is that many women only found freedom after being made a widow. Some could argue that when it came to relationships, aristocratic families had it more difficult than common people. The reason for this was because the influential and wealthy was married due to political or financial reasons rather than genuine love. Marriage was so important during Stuart Britain that an act was passed in 1604 that stated that a man who left his family or committed would be deemed a rogue, which would merit a punishment. For example, a case went to trial over a man named Thomas Middleton, who had to provide evidence to prove he was only married to one woman in the later part of the Stuart era. A document called the Political Arithmetic was published, which talked about all of the people working in England, including those working in agriculture, manufacturing. In it, William Petty, the writer, expressed his concern about how gold and silver were now in scarcity, and that the country was growing poorer by the day. He also claimed that the focus on Ireland, Scotland, and America was a burden to the country and provided no advantage. While this opinion may sound harsh, many share the opinion that England had overstretched its assets, which now meant the population was suffering. As a result, by the early 17th century, Scotland, Wales, and Ireland were unified with England, and in 1707, Queen Anne officially packed the Acts of Union. Sadly, life expectancy was much shorter than that of today, with the likelihood of children dying being incredibly high. In fact, childbirth was dangerous for both the mother and the child without the medicines and treatments we have today. If the trauma and pain didn't kill the mother, infections would soon after. Experts believe that 25 women out of 1,000 died giving birth during the Stuart period. Other things that killed young people during this era were worms, plague, and dysentery, as well as an illness gripping in the guts, which killed people through diarrhea and crippling stomach pain. A major factor in these kinds of illnesses came down to personal hygiene, which the Stuarts did not hold in high regard. This also led to a subjective problem. Parasites like fleas and lice infesting every level of social class. Intestinal worms were also common, with eggs being laid or passed into foods when being prepared in their spare time. People living in the Stuart period would enjoy dancing, singing, and then listening to live music at music halls and other poorer and while higher classes went to the theater, common folk would enjoy betting on and dogfighting, another blood sport that brought many people together, were public exit executions, which would be held in town squares during the Stuart era. Food and drinks from other countries began to become popular in England. The reason for this was down to the global trade routes established via road and ocean, which also introduced wares never seen before on British soil. This included furs from North America, tea from China, and spices from India. This is where the palate of the British people changed, with exotic wares and ingredients being welcomed into the culture. By 1633, strange yellow fruit known as bananas were found on market stalls, while the first coffee houses and tea rooms opened their doors. It was here that many people would visit to discuss politics and other business during its early days. Coffee was considered to be a man's drink, which led to women being banned from visiting the coffee houses. Women looking for a warm drink could visit tea rooms, however, while hot chocolate was available to higher class members of both music sources. The 18th century, known as the Georgian cows, the Georgian coffins at these War saw the rise of the Industrial Revolution, where England was dominated by the age of steam network of canals and factories manufacturing on a larger scale. With that being said, the workshops were still small, such as textile workers who would spin, weave, dye cloth, and repair clothing. Industry was made up of thousands of small-scale operations. Areas of Britain specialized in a specific area of industry, such as metal production in the Midlands, mining in the Northeast, and glassware work in the West Midlands. State-of-the-art technologies led to breakthroughs in agriculture and industry, which changed the country exponentially. Food production was increased, which ensured that there were plenty of it to go around. Affording it, on the other hand, was a different matter. For the poor foreign workers and vagabonds offered cheap labor, which created mass unemployment across the country. Especially in rural villages, this led to many people living in the country relocating to larger towns and cities to find work. These people were welcomed into the growing factories, which in turn increased manufacture and the development of technology. The only thing that slowed down production, however, was the limited power sources, with many businesses relying on water wheels, windmills, and horses to work large tools and machines. With the advancement of steam introduced by Thomas N. Kahn and his steam-driven piston engine, industries now had a way of increasing their workflow as well, pumping water from flooded mines, transporting goods across the country via trains, and powering large textile mills. By the late 19th century, around 2,000 steam engines were in use in Britain. The Derby family of Shropshire re-imaged the iron manufacturing process, which other metals that were ideal for making machines and larger tools. With the help of steam engines, coal mining was made more efficient in turn. The spoils were used to power steam engines across the company. This means that coal was one of the most valuable industries in the entire country. In 1769, Richard Arkwright created the water frame, which allowed large-scale textile spinning to take place a short time later. James Hargreaves' spinning jenny was made available, which made cotton spinning much easier. In 1780, Edmund Cardar's power loom continued the string of advancements which made cheap clothing available to the entire population. As steam industries continued to evolve, so did the types of businesses using them. Factories began sprouting up all over the country, which provided goods and materials to many parts of the world. These companies provided jobs on a scale that had not been seen before. For example, Richard R. Cotton factories in London saw almost 600 employees at their peak, while some factories in Birmingham had almost enough factories in Birmingham. 1,000 employees at any one time. During the 1770s, even children were employed, as their small hands were ideal for intricate work such as making buckles, and locks. Many of these businesses were in incredibly dangerous work environments, not to mention that the workers were treated poorly. Many compared some factories to prisons, with those who made mistakes of not working hard enough facing physical discipline. Workhouses and orphanages would send children to work in factories and mines.